Dodger manager Dave Roberts, top of the hour. Phil Jackson will join us in an hour from now. 877-3DP Show. Email address, dp@danpatrick.com. Twitter handle @DP Show. He is the Monday morning quarterback. Senior NFL reporter Albert Breer is back. We always want to know who won and who lost here. So let's start with that. The immediate reaction to who won the trade deadline.
Oh, that's a good question because I think so many of these teams are in such different positions. And so, what the Colts did conceptually is so different than what the Jets did, I really actually like where the Cowboys are at now because I think they come out of the mosaic, right, of the Micah Parsons, Quinnen Williams situation. And if you really add the whole thing up, right, they got a year and a half older with a key defensive player. They have a disruptive defensive tackle instead of a disruptive edge now. They save about $20 million a year on the contract, and they move a second-round pick into the first round. So if you look at the totality of it, if they're able to maximize Quinnen Williams, now you got Quinnen Williams and Osa Odighizuwa to be the foundation of your defense that you're trying to build with Matt Eberflus there. Matt Eberflus's best defenses in Indianapolis were built around a dominant defensive tackle in DeForest Buckner and a really good D tackle next to him and Grover Stewart. Then, even you look at the veteran end of it, they trade a guy in Mozzie Smith, who was a game day inactive for him, and get a really good veteran back in Kenny Clark. So is it going to help the Cowboys right now? No, I don't think it makes them a playoff team in 2025, but I think it does position them to build pretty aggressively, maybe keep George Pickens, and really take a big swing in 2026.
What do you think what the Colts did? Speaking of big swings.
So what's interesting about the Colts is they pushed their chips to the middle of the table on the core that they have now, right? So they're basically at the spot now. Their coach is in his third year, their GM's in his sixth year, and so they've got this core of players that they really believe in, right? So on the offensive line, it's Nelson, it's Smith, it's Raymond, it's Tyler Warren at receiver, it's Downs, it's Pierce, it's Pittman, obviously Jonathan Taylor at running back, veteran players like Buckner and Franklin in the front seven. You've got a really good young player in Leatu Latu at defensive end. So you're really pushing your chips into the middle of the table on those guys. But in particular, you're pushing your chips to the middle of the table on Daniel Jones. Because to me, this takes away your opportunity to go and get a quarterback over the next few years, right? Because how you probably do that is you spend high draft picks either to take them in the draft or to trade for that quarterback. And without first round picks the next 2 years, it's going to become much harder to acquire one, which tells you they're all in on Daniel Jones, puts pressure on them to sign Daniel Jones, but it tells you that they think Daniel Jones is more than just an answer for 2025. So that's what's so interesting about it to me. And I do like what it means for them in the here and the now, which is this is a position that they were really looking for help at over the last couple of weeks, and probably the weakest spot in the roster in that Pittsburgh game the other day. A few weeks from now, it's going to be the biggest strength, one of the biggest strengths in the roster, with Sauce Gardner on one side and Charvarius Ward coming back from injury on the other side. Both those guys are versatile. They'll be able to match against different receivers, and they'll allow for Lou Anarumo to be more creative with what he's doing up front. So all the way around, I love it for what it means for them for 2025. But it really does mean they're in on this core and they're in on Daniel Jones going forward beyond just this year.
And it feels like if I'm the Colts, I'm building my team, reinforcing my team to beat the Chiefs. Just like it felt like the Ravens built their roster with Ozzie Newsome to beat the Steelers. And they figured if they're beating the competition in their own division, they're good enough to win a Super Bowl. Are the Colts built to beat the Chiefs?
Right now, that's the way it looks. Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to have a chance against the Chiefs, we've seen it over the last 5 years. The way to beat the Chiefs is you have to disrupt their passing game and you have to hit Patrick Mahomes. And that's like that's the way it is with all great quarterbacks, right? Like the greatest of all time, Tom Brady. How would you beat the Patriots back over those 20 years? You would beat them by beating their offensive line and beating up Tom Brady. And so I think by going and getting Sauce Gardner and again, getting Ward back from injury, now you've got an opportunity to create chaos up front, right? And so they're going to be able to do so much more with their defensive front. And the hope is then that allows you to get in Patrick Mahomes' face, disrupt the timing of their offense, and maybe get them playing from behind a little bit more than they would like to. So yeah, I can certainly see that, Dan, if that's your takeaway, where this would be very Chiefs-centric move by the Colts.
Give me the team that surprised you that they didn't make a move.
Seattle makes a move. The Rams. I would say the Rams. I thought coming into this, look, their biggest need over the first half of the year has been corner, and they did make a move there. They traded for Roger McCreary, brought him over from Tennessee.
I thought Buffalo, I thought was going to make a move or needed to make a move.
So those two, like the Rams, like the reason I say the Rams, right, is the Rams because they had really kept their powder dry. Like over the last few years, they had kind of reset, and the whole F them picks thing. Like now all of a sudden they're getting big production guys in the first round. They're using first round picks as capital in a different way. And so I remember talking to guys there where it was like, we still have this in us. It's just going to take the right opportunity coming along. So them not being as aggressive, I think that surprised me just a little bit, although I have them in the Super Bowl, so I'm not going to be too critical of them. And then the Bills are my other team in the Super Bowl. And I think the one thing I did expect to happen yesterday, I was expecting the Bills to make a move for a defensive tackle, because Ed Oliver is out until at least the playoffs, and it's no sure thing that they're going to get him back in the playoffs, depending on that biceps injury. So yes, they were sniffing around at receiver, and I thought a Shaheed would have really worked for them. The price was relatively high for Shaheed. But defensive tackle was one spot where I really thought they would at least add someone. And so the fact that they didn't do that did get my attention a little bit.
Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback, their senior NFL reporter. Why didn't the Raiders trade Max Crosby?
Because he's 28, I think, 27, 28. So they still view him as a piece of their long-term future. He's not just a short-term guy for them. This isn't, Myles Garrett, for example, turns 30 at the end of this year. So I think you can question whether or not he'd be, a part of the Browns, or at least still what he is whenever they get good again, right? Trey Hendrickson with the Bengals, if you don't believe they're going to win this year, well, he's, 31 years old and in a contract year. The scenario with Max is a little bit different, where he's still young enough where you could see getting good enough fast enough where he's still got a chunk of his prime left and you're contending. I think the other element here too is I think that front office didn't want to screw the coaching staff. And I think that's really an element that's been in play with them, across their roster, where they wanted to be careful because they knew that roster is really deficient in a lot of different places. And they didn't want to put their coaches in a position where it was difficult to continue to establish the program over the next couple of months and have a chance to hit the ground running into 2026, because they just don't have enough players to make it work. So they weren't going to give away Jacoby Myers. They wind up trading him, but that leaves them really razor thin at receiver. And, Eric Stokes is another guy that they were reluctant to move. They got a lot of calls on him as a corner. But it was just at the point where it's if we deal him off, we're really going to have to get good value, because we're putting our coaches in a tough spot at that position. If we let him go. And we're talking again about Eric Stokes and Jacoby Myers. What kind of spot are you putting your coaches in if you trade away Max Crosby? I think that was an element in all of this too.
How would you feel if you're a Jets fan today?
I would feel like I hope my owner is patient. You know what I mean? Because I think that's the catch-22 about this whole thing, is what Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn did. I think is going to demand patience. And that ownership does not have a great history of being patient. And so, like, will they be patient if it looks this way again next year? Because the Jets have really kind of gone all in on young players. Now, that said, I think that there's good logic to what they did, because I think there's like a recognition. We don't have the quarterback right now, and we weren't winning with this group. And yes, we had a top five defense the last 3 years in a row, but the defense wasn't very good this year. And like we are going to need capital to find our quarterback over the next couple of years. And if you look at it too, I mean, they didn't strip it bare. That's the thing, is like this was a fire sale because they give away two like franchise level players. But then start to go down the list of players they still have there. They have Garrett Wilson at receiver. We'll see if Brees Hall's back at running back. They've got two young tackles that were drafted in the top half of the first round, Ola Fashanu and Armand Membu. They have two young defensive ends that were drafted in the first round, and Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. They've got a linebacker they just re-signed in Jameen Sherwood. There is some building blocks there. And now, like, as those guys get a little bit older, and as some of those guys come off of rookie contracts, they're going to have an ability to build behind those guys with premium young talent. So I look at that and I see they're set up with 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks in the 26th draft. So that'll give them a chance to get better next year. And then they have 3 first-round picks, and this is really the key, in the 2027 draft. And just talking to people, in NFL circles, they aren't wild about next year's draft class, but the one after that, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, Colin Simmons, Dylan Stewart, Leonard Moore, and then young quarterbacks like Arch Manning could be in that class. Dylan Raiola could be in that class. CJ Carr at Notre Dame could be in that class. Julian Sayin could be in that class. Like, you've really set yourself up now where if you're patient, you have a chance to build a good roster over the next year and a half. Maybe add your quarterback in 27 and have a young quarterback coming onto a roster that's already pretty good. That'd be the optimistic Jets fan view of it if your owner has enough patience to see out that plan.
Wow. All right. That actually sounds plausible. You should work for the Jets. You should work in PR there, putting that out there.
Don't say that, Dan. I don't know. I don't think Woody would agree with you on that. I'll put it that way. But
if you're going to predict Kyler Murray's future, what would it be?
Yeah. So he's got guaranteed money next year, which is sort of the problem, right? Like, so is he going to be the Cardinals quarterback in 2027? No. Like, how do they handle this? Can he be someone's reclamation project next year? Will somebody be willing to take on the money? That'd be the big question. Because I think when you start to look at, like, all right, like, if someone's looking for their version of Daniel Jones or Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold next year, like in the spring, and say you don't like the quarterback class, who are you looking at? And Kyler Murray would be one of the players that I think would be in that category. Maybe Tua will be in that category with whoever's in charge of the Dolphins, making a decision on that, in the winter and the spring.
Who would you rather have, Kyler Murray or Tua?
Tua, probably. I don't know. Well, who would you rather have?
Is there another option?
Yeah. I mean, I think like the problem with Kyler's a spectacular talent. Like, my problem with Kyler would be, like, I think all the criticism of Kyler, for as spectacular as some of the stuff that he does is, I mentioned this on another show the other day where, like, he has this tendency to bail out of the pocket and play out of structure a lot, and it looks great, at times. But it kind of like it was the same criticism you had on Shador when he was coming out, which is like, it kind of like the way he plays can kind of put some of the other players on offense in a tough spot. And I think that's reflected by the way Jacoby Brissett has come in and just played the position. Like Marvin Harrison all of a sudden looks pretty good, right? Trey McBride has looked great. Like, the offensive line doesn't look so bad. Like, different elements of their offense have really started to come together with Jacoby in there, which I think informs you if you're the Cardinals, right? It tells you, like, if we can just get average quarterback play, we might be all right. So I'd say with both those guys, with Tua and Kyler, I think that either they're back as bridge quarterbacks where they are now next year, or there's someone else's bridge quarterback in 2026, because the guaranteed money really complicates things in both cases.
Is Indiana currently the best football state in the country if I include college and pro?
So I think it was Fritzy that asked me that when I was coming on, and I would really have to think about it because the one thing that popped into my head was California, with if you look at where the Niners are, where the Rams are, where the Chargers are, USC is pretty good, right? So UCLA is terrible, and I think Stanford and Cal are pretty irrelevant to the conversation. But is USC close enough, or are we grading this on a scale where, like, just because Indiana has two teams, because are you including Purdue in that?
No. I mean,
So then,
they're in
I
there.
can eliminate Stanford and Cal.
I'm not making the rules here. I was just saying if I go, I got Indiana at 2, I got Notre Dame, and I got
Notre Dame.
the Colts.
Yeah, I forgot Notre Dame.
So I got the Colts. Yeah. Do you have 3 that would compete with those 3? If I said you had to have 2 college and 1 pro.
2 college and 1 pro?
Yeah.
So I'd take the Niners over the Chargers probably, but that's close, right?
But you're going to take the Rams overall.
Rams.
Now
right.
you
Rams
have to have 2.
And then either the Niners or the Chargers and USC.
Okay.
That's pretty good, right?
Well, I got Notre Dame and I got Indiana, and then I got the Colts.
Right. So you probably still win there. I can't say Ohio because
no, you can't.
Ohio State's way up here, but then yeah.
How did a guy from Massachusetts end up at Ohio State?
Because my dad went to Michigan, and my grandfather went to Michigan, and my great grandfather went to Michigan, and I'm the black sheep.
Wait, you went to Ohio State to spite them?
No, I didn't get into Michigan. So F them.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, because I have, like, my dad's from Detroit. All my family, I always saw, like, so, like, for me growing up and like having that kind of, like, everybody on my dad's side of the family went to either Michigan or Michigan State. So I grew up around that. Like, even though I didn't grow up there, like, that was like kids around here, like kids who grow up here, like their idea of college is like some, liberal arts school in the mountains. You know what I mean? Like, my idea of college was like probably what your idea was of college growing up in Dayton, right? Like, it's these big hulking Big Ten campuses. So I always wanted to go to one. And, a really good friend of mine, a high school teammate of mine, went to Ohio State. He's a year older than me, and he was in priority walk-on on the football team there. His name was Eddie Brown. Still lives in Columbus. His daughter played soccer at Oklahoma and Creighton. And so Eddie brought me out my senior year in high school, his freshman year at Ohio State. I like, honestly, like, it was very easy to, you've been to Columbus, very easy to fall in love with that place. I had high boards and low grades in high school. And let's just say Ohio State wasn't as hard to get into then as it is now. And I thought because I was a legacy, I'd get into Michigan, and it didn't work out for me. So that's the short version of the story. But it all worked out for the best, I'd say.
Did you cry when Michigan said no?
No, I knew I did that to myself, like I knew, I thought I'd get in. But like, I thought, like, maybe because, again, like, you're a legacy like that, like, I maybe they would let me in, but I also knew, like, I screwed around enough in high school to mess that up, which is fine. Like, again, like, it worked out for the best. I'm more than happy where I went to school. That's one of those things where maybe when you expect it the least, things work out for the best.
Great to talk to you again. Thank you, Albert.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback.